Welcome back, Streamer Nation. I'm your host, Michael Simeone, and you're listening to the SP Streamer Podcast, part of the Fantrax and FantraxHQ.com family. I'm here with my co-host, Lauren Auerbach. Lauren, tell me what was one of the best gifts you got this holiday season?
One of the best gifts I got, actually, it's baseball related, so this should be a good one. I got a book, which doesn't sound very fun or exciting, but I got a book called what was called Making Japan's National Game, and it basically was about kind of the impact of baseball and kind of the Japanese baseball community, kind of their impact on Japanese society. And I was super into that. I haven't read it yet. And if I mangled what it was about, this is what I think it's about, but I'm excited if that's really what it is about.
Did you ask for it or someone just gave it to you?
I had asked for it.
Okay. That sounds interesting.
I did get it. Yeah. So I was excited.
I'm going to need to ask you for the name of it. So
I will. I think
purchase it.
Yeah. I think it's Making.
You can tell me later. So you can tell me now. I'm going to forget and I'm going to end up messaging
well, I
you
will
anyway
say,
for it. So.
I will say too, I can tell you later, but it's written by Blair Williams, who some of our listeners may know as Everywhere Blair on Twitter.
Yes.
So
Yes,
I'm
he's
super stoked by that.
He's actually in our Discord chat. He is a SP Streamer member.
Okay, there we go.
All right, so we do have a special guest who you can see on the screen if you're watching this. He's the creator of Jag Fantasy Sports, responsible for injury data with Baseball Prospectus, a best ball extraordinaire, and most notably the leader of the I Hate Michael Simeone's Food Takes fan club, and that is Derek Rhoads. What's going on, Derek?
It's a big fan club, to be honest. It's a lot of pressure. Being the president of that it's something I take seriously. In leadership is tough, but it's a responsibility I feel like I have to take on, because these takes cannot go unchallenged.
I feel like when those takes were coming out, every single one, you're like, okay, this is your worst tweet that you have ever said.
And I'm to the point now where I'm like, I'm not going to get mad at this. This is too outrageous. I can't. I have to marvel at it, because I know that I know you believe them. Like, I know that this is not a shtick for you. Like, this is Simeone. It's like, I do wonder sometimes, like, who hurt you? Like what made you this way? Like, I'd love, like, do I need to meet your parents? Like, I just wonder, like, what childhood trauma like created this set of taste buds for you. It is something I think about at times.
I'm known to be like a very picky, weird eater. I've gotten much better, believe it or not, as time has gone on, though. But
those are two separate things. You can be picky and normal, and picky and weird, and I think that's an important distinction, because like, you can be kind of picky, like, I only like the most popular foods, but that's not you, Simeone. You are most picky in that you like the most controversial of foods, I feel like. So it's exciting.
I guess so. It's
good for the brand.
All right. So for those who don't know, Derek, you are very big into best ball. You were, kind of the head of that, I guess, the front of that type of league last year, because it's kind of up and coming. And it was you and Brian, really, who were the first ones to really kind of like talk about that format and stuff a lot. So I just want to ask you.
And Mike Alexander, let me just shout out. Mike is also an OG. In fact, he and I go back a few years talking about this and being in leagues together. He another good best ball guy.
Okay, cool. I need to follow him. I don't know if I do.
Rotowan, I believe, is his.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, question: how many leagues did you enter last year for best ball?
A lot, 120-ish. Like, I went back and looked, so like this is
triple digits.
It's an insane number. But I think I was only in 3 leagues that I had any type of in-season management, and one of those was Raz Slam. So it's like so it's just like I basically draft and then I'm kind of done, which is good because I do all the injury stuff during the season. So I'm busy doing that. So it works out really well with what I do. But yeah, so it's a big number, but I don't know how to make it sound less crazy. It's a big
lot
number,
of
but
best
not
ball
having
leagues,
to manage it.
there are all a lot of like cheap best ball leagues out there too.
Yeah,
so like
that's the other thing.
You can really stack them up easily.
Yep. And I play up and down the price points. Like I'm not somebody who, their NFBC has like $150 leagues, but then Fantrax has $10 leagues, and I go all up and down those.
Right. So how was your return on investment? I'm assuming you had a certain target you wanted to meet. Did you meet that target?
Yeah.
Basically, how'd you do overall?
Yeah. So I always shoot, my personal goal is always like 100%. So, just double what I put in. That's kind of like, that's how I determine if somebody goes, hey, did you have a good season? And if I hit that number, I go, yes. That's kind of me. I have kind of a slow and steady method. Some people would say that that's not enough, and I get that. But I did beat that. It wasn't quite as good as 2020 was a really good season for me. So 2021 was, it was a good season, not a great season.
Gotcha.
So I was not disappointed. But it was definitely a weird season, kind of valuation wise. And so, honestly, I was just kind of thrilled to come back with what it did, because I felt like it was, for me personally, I kind of took some stances that ended up not panning out at all, as far as like approaches to player health and some things like that. And like, they just were wrong. So I was thrilled to come out the way it did.
All right. So yeah, so you learned. That was going to be my next question. What kind of lessons did you learn from last year, or something you think you need to improve on?
Yeah, it's tough because it was such a unique season, and I don't, now I say that I think 2022 might actually also be a unique season in a little different way.
I hope not.
Well, I think that, I've been thinking about this as the offseason has worn on, and we kind of have this continued darkness of no baseball news, but I have been thinking about the fact that like, we're probably not having a normal spring training. In fact, it seems very unlikely at this point that we have a normal spring training. And so like, this year might be kind of similar to last year in that regard, that we saw a lot of early injuries, and then we see stuff go back to normal. I'm hopeful that it's not as bad, because, players were with the teams all last year. They knew this was coming. They could kind of prepare, maybe get some plans from some of the teams and things like that to have, workouts to do during the off season. But these guys are on their own. They're not, they're kind of doing their own thing. And so that can be good and that can be bad. So, I do worry a little bit about what the season could bring. But just to get back to the original question, I took some opinions that I really wanted to focus on what I considered innings that were more stable, players that I felt like had better health profiles and that they would stay healthy. And then I kind of avoided some players who I felt like who had less safe profiles. And a lot of those players ended up having really healthy seasons, some of them for the first time. I don't know if that's a process thing, or if these guys just found a way to stay healthy when other guys didn't. So that's kind of hard to evaluate, but it definitely was wrong. It's going to be, I want to try and not overreact too much. But it is. Yeah.
Well, it's probably a little hard for you too, since you mainly
I do this a lot,
injuries and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's move on to injuries, since we're talking about it.
Yeah.
I want to talk about some pitchers, some hitters, and kind of discuss your thoughts on them. So first I want to talk about some notable shoulder injuries. I know I've been in your DMs about some of these, annoying you
slid
probably.
In there. I had to tell my wife about that. I was like, look, this guy is right in here.
I like asked you about one guy, and it's like, oh wait, what about this guy? What do you think? Yeah. So, and that was because I was doing my starting pitcher rank, so that's why I had to ask. All right, so let's mention Shane Bieber first. So he missed 103 days because of a shoulder issue. Currently going 26 ADP. What are your thoughts on him for the 2022 season? Are you worried? Do you like the ADP? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so this is kind of the first chink in his armor, right? Like, he's been very healthy up to this point. He's been a guy that people have relied on. We feel like he's got a relatively safe repertoire, if you will. He's not a guy who's out there throwing, pushing the limits of what we can do, with velocity and things like that. So people, I think, have felt really safe about him in the past. And now, it's like, how do we feel? I'm a little concerned. Something that I would be curious to watch in the spring is if we see the velocity back up to where it was. So he came back and was down a tick and a half. And that could just be because he's still, you have to rest and you have to build back up. And then maybe we just didn't get all the way back to where he wanted to be.
He was actually down before as well.
Did dip a little bit.
So
but it's hard to know
finished...
if that's because of the if he's if he's battling something, he fights through it, and then he either gets more serious, or they realize, oh, he can't pitch through this. So it is a little tough to know, especially shoulder, because he could have been dealing with some shoulder discomfort that he just tried to push through, or quite frankly some other arm discomfort that caused the shoulder injury. But yeah, you're right. He was down a little bit, right? He was down all season, right?
Yeah, he was. I think it was either he was 94 last season and started off 90. I think it was 94 in 2020 and was 93 to start of 2021.
Yeah, he was definitely 93 for 2021, and then at the end of the season he was like 91.
91, yeah. That's
bad. So I want to see what happens this spring. He's obviously had a long layoff. You do worry about shoulder injuries; they can be recurring. But he's had a lot of time, and so I don't think there's no reason to be optimistic, but I don't think his price is accurately reflecting the fact that he is coming off this season, and we really haven't seen the old Shane Bieber yet. And until we see a guy come back, I'm always a little hesitant to feel like he's back.
Yeah. Lauren, would you trust Bieber as your SP1? Because that's basically where he's being taken now. So he'd be your ace of your pitching staff for your fantasy team?
No, I mean, I'm kind of with Derek on this one. I think that like right now he's going as an SP8, I think, according to NSBC.
Okay.
That's a little too rich for me. I think if I am, if he's, 26 ADP, I think you referenced, I understand that there's not a huge kind of injury track record with him, but at that price point, I tend to be a little bit more conservative, especially with pitchers. And I think, I know what his upside can be, but what concerns me is I don't know what his floor will be this season. So that's where I would tend to be a little bit cautious. So I don't like his current ADP right now. I don't like it. I would like, we just did kind of SP consensus rankings over at Fantrax, and I struggled where to rank him. And I noticed that I was the only one who had him kind of in double digits. Everyone kind of had him around 8, 9, 7. And I actually, I did have him, I ranked him at 12, but I would like to change it. I think that that's still a little too high. But again, if he comes out, like Derek said, and has a strong spring, I think that's encouraging. But I just, I don't know. I'm fine with someone else kind of taking a shot on Bieber.
Yeah, I think I have Bieber closer to 20, honestly. Okay. I think that's just because I guess I'm a little more, conservative when it comes to injuries and stuff like that. So I think even if he comes back, I still want to see it, which could be a fault of on my part, because he definitely can be a top 3 pitcher, no doubt. But I'd rather go with the safer floor. All right. Next pitcher is Pablo Lopez. I love Pablo Lopez. Have always loved Pablo Lopez. Always will love Pablo Lopez. But he has missed time with a shoulder injury in, I think, 3 of the last 4 seasons.
18, 19, and 21. Yeah.
Yes. He's going at an ADP of 116. So since this is a repeating injury, Derek, are you basically afraid to take him? I mean, do you see him going over 120 innings?
No. And I think if I adjust my playing time a little bit based on my own opinions on injuries. I look at a projection, then I kind of adjust playing time. I have him at 100 innings. And I think that anything above that is gravy. And I don't even think that's a super secure 100 innings, because the problem with a guy like Pablo Lopez is you don't know if those innings are going to come all together. Like if you get a 100 inning stretch, okay, he's a quality pitcher. You get 100 innings back to back, and then you can move on and replace him. That's not so bad. If you get 50 innings here, have to roster him for 2 months, and then get another 50 innings on the backside, like that's not going to work. So he's not a guy I won't take him off my board. That's just not generally my approach. I value him down to where I think is a reasonable expectation, which is 100 innings, which means I won't draft him, right? Nobody I will always be the lowest guy in the room on Pablo Lopez.
Yeah. What about you, Lauren? Agree.
Yeah, I mean,
even though we love him.
I love Pablo as well, but I do agree with Derek on this one. And looking, Steamer has him projected for 166 innings, and I think that is crazy pants. Like I don't see that. He hasn't pitched more than 112 innings in his career, and you have to be concerned with his short career, that kind of 3 year, you're seeing this shoulder injury. So that's something that you have to keep in mind. And I agree with Derek. He's not someone that I will just take off my board, because like I love Pablo Lopez, but you have to get him at the right price, and you have to understand what you're getting when you draft him.
I feel like we kind of might as well take him off our board though, because I really don't think he's ever going to get.
You're functionally taking him, right? You're functionally taking him off your board, right?
Yeah. Because he's never going to reach. I mean, he'd have to go to like
200,
almost like Kopech level, like around those guys, or I don't know. All right, next player is Jack Flaherty. He missed a ton of playing time this year with an oblique injury and shoulder injury. He's going at the ADP of 66. What are your thoughts on him, Derek?
So I actually came out a little more optimistic on Flaherty. He had the oblique strain, and then coming off the oblique strain, his velo was down. And then I think it's not very much longer that he has the shoulder injury, but he's only out 30 days for a shoulder injury. And honestly, that's not bad for a shoulder strain. And then when he came back at the end of the season, the velo was pretty close to where we would expect it to be for him. Mm-hmm. And only a few starts. So I actually came back kind of optimistic of Jack Flaherty. And if you look at his history, he has a pretty good history of being a workhorse pitcher, a guy who's giving you a lot of length, even when in the minors, which I like to see that from guys. You can't always get a deep major league, a lot of seasons in the majors, but even in the minors, you see a guy's pitching a lot of innings. That gives me some encouragement. So I came out Jack Flaherty thinking that I felt okay about where he's at, especially because the shoulder injury appeared to be minor. Like I said, 30 days, and oblique strains are a hard thing. So, you come back for an oblique strain, sometimes you can overcompensate, and then that can lead to another injury because they're very touchy. They're very easy to re-injure. So sometimes you see a guy come back from an oblique strain and end up back on the IL not very much longer later, both pitchers and hitters, because they're shifting something in their mechanics that leads to an injury somewhere else. So I'm not as concerned about Jack Flaherty.
So let me ask both of you, because they're pretty close in ADP. Would you prefer Jack Flaherty or Jose Barrios?
Well, you go, Derek. You can go first.
No, go ahead, Lauren.
You're the guest. You go first.
No, I'll let you fall on the grenade. No,
I'll let you fall on the grenade.
I've been in that position a few different times this year, and I have taken Barrios, but I'm not opposed. Some of that's the format I play, because I play in an inning that really maximizes innings pitched as opposed to quality innings. I think in Roto, I would be more interested in Flaherty, because we know what Jose Barrios is. I mean, we've got it. It's a good pitcher. He's a good pitcher, but we know what it is. I don't think there's an untapped ceiling. I think with Flaherty, we can still look at him and wish upon a little more than what we've seen.
It's a good point. What do you think, Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at my rankings. I've Flaherty ranked 10 spots higher than Barrios, but I just because I mean, I think that I know what I'm getting with Barrios, and I think that and he's kind of one of those kind of boring, consistent guys, but is serviceable. And I think with Flaherty, I'm willing to take kind of that upside, because he's also going kind of, as kind of like a mid kind of 25 to I think 30 range in terms of SPs. And I think that's about fair. So I think I would take a shot on Flaherty.
Yeah, he's going 27, Barrios going 29. That does include some relievers though, so they're a little higher.
Okay.
All right, let's go to notable forearm issues. First one's going to be Lance McCullars. He had forearm tightness. I think it was playoffs or later in the year. Long history of injuries with Lance McCullars. He's going at pick 178. I am fully out on him, but what do you think about him, Derek?
Yeah, IL stints in 16, 17, 18, recovering from Tommy John in 19, and an IL stint in 20 and 21. So for those of you at home, that is every single season of the last 5, 6. So That's not great. That's not what you want. And Lance McCullars is very exciting when he's in. He's a very talented pitcher. Yeah. The injury was a strain to the flexor pronator, and so here's where you're concerned. So they're talking about him being back to pitching or throwing in like 30 days, but this is the pattern that we see sometimes with this injury. We come back, we get to spring training, we ramp all the way up, and we get a re-injury, or it turns out the injury is not completely healed, and then we get Tommy John. Like that's the pattern we see. Now, not every time, but it is a not uncommon pattern. And with a guy who's had his track record of struggling to stay healthy, he's a guy, I know I just said like 2 seconds ago, I don't take people off my board. I take this guy off my board because I don't even know what you would put for a reasonable projection for him. Like, I don't know what you can expect.
He could end up like a Denilson Lamet, in my opinion, like just end up barely pitching, and they keep trying. It's just, I don't know.
And in fact, I think the situation's very similar, because again, guy injured, elbow injury, coming off the season, and we're not going to see him healthy again before you have to make the decision, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You agree, Lauren? You stay away from McCullars?
I do, and I'm okay letting someone kind of pay for his career season last year, where he went for 162.1 innings, which is the most that he's gone for in his career. He hasn't topped 130, so I'm willing. I think that his price will be jacked up a little bit higher, and I'm perfectly fine with someone going after that.
Yeah, I was actually out on him. I was thinking in my head that I was going to be out on him anyway before the injury even popped up. I think there's so many people out there who just love McCullars, and he's always going to be a little inflated, in my opinion. And then the injury happened. I was like, no doubt about on him.
I mean, if you watch him pitch, it's hard not to love him, right?
Oh, great.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's,
and when he's throwing his curveballs like a crap ton, and, he can be very, very good. But in my opinion, I think he's also very inconsistent. All right, next up is Clayton Kershaw. Got a PRP injection. He's going at pick 203. Derek, do you think he can get through a season? What do you think?
I don't know. I don't think. No, if you ask me like, hey, make a bet, I would say no. Now that, I don't want, it's not impossible. So no one should read that as like he can't do it or he's destined to not make it. But, so the pattern we saw with Kershaw is pain. Okay, we're going to rest, we're going to rehab, and then we're going to come back. And then he gets all the way back and he starts pitching in live action, or, he's pitching in real games, and he's starting to ramp up the stress. And then we have pain again. And the pain has been described as forearm. It's been described as elbow. So it's in that region. We didn't get a lot of clarity from them as to what it is. And I don't know that they have a ton of clarity what it is. Again, I think you have the kind of situation where, number one, he wasn't re-signed by the Dodgers, right? And they're the people who know him the most. That doesn't mean he won't be, but it means it's not a slam dunk. Because if it had been a slam dunk, right, we're gonna take care of Clayton Kershaw. He's Clayton Kershaw. The fact that the medicals probably aren't real clear is going to make it really wishy-washy coming into the season. But then again, you have another situation where a guy could be trying to ramp up, and you're not going to know until after he is fully ramped up if he's healthy. So I don't feel great, and I probably will not own any Clayton Kershaw this year.
So, Lauren, let me ask you. We'll start with you because they're going pretty close in ADP. Who would you, if you had to? I mean, I know we probably all wouldn't, but if you had to take a chance on someone between McCullars and Kershaw, who would you lean?
I would probably go. I think I would go Kershaw. I don't love that though.
Well, we don't love it.
No, I'm telling everybody.
I feel like you have to just go Kershaw because overall he's just been a better pitcher.
Yeah, and I think on that, at least, like, I don't know innings, but I know that what I'm getting kind of on a per game basis will be good. I do think that the red flag though is what Derek mentioned was where the Dodgers didn't give him a qualifying offer, which I think that is just like. I don't know. Of course, they probably want him at pay him less money, and they've got a lot of lots of money to pay going to other players. But I just think these are the guys that know him, and they were like, no qualifying offer. But I would say Kershaw, just I think on that per game basis, he's top notch.
All right, so we're gonna move on now to pitchers who basically either missed all of 2021 or barely pitched, coming off most of them Tommy John. So let's start with Luis Severino. He was able to pitch a little bit last season. He's going back pick 188. I will say, not that he is, the end all be all, but obviously Phil Desaut is a very good player. I brought up Severino, Syndergaard, Clevenger, and I think I included Verlander in that. And he said of anyone he would probably maybe have a share of, it would be Severino. So, Derek, do you think because we saw a little bit of him pitch last season that maybe he's not as risky as some of these other guys?
I think that. Sorry, I was looking up to see where Severino's going. So he's
going at 188.
Okay, 188. So
Verlander's going at 100.
Verlander is the one that's interesting because his discount is the least severe. My issue with Severino is it's not just the Tommy John, right? Like you have a guy who has a history. He's had shoulder problems. He's had when he was on his way to recover from Tommy John, he suffered a leg injury, which delayed their Tommy John recovery. So here's a guy who he has had some other issues, but he's been really good when he was pitching. And I do think, the discount does reflect a decent amount of risk in his profile. The issue I have is how many innings do we really see the Yankees let him go after? I think if he had a cleaner health profile, historically, I would expect the Yankees to say, look, you're 2 years past your Tommy John. Let's go. Let's do a full season. Let's see 180 innings. I don't know if I'm convinced that we're going to see that, even if we'd like to. I think probably what will happen is even if there's not major injuries, that minor injuries might make him miss 2 or 3 starts and things like that. But I feel that way both about Severino and Syndergaard. Of the two of those guys, I would take Severino.
Well, Syndergaard scares the crap out of me because even though he pitched, they're like, you can't throw your slider.
Right.
He wasn't allowed to throw certain pitches even at the end of the year when he came in to play some game, And he's
also a pitcher who continues to try and push himself, even though he hasn't shown us that he can stay healthy at this kind of base level. He's constantly trying to I want to throw harder. I want to do more. And it's well, show me you can stay healthy at less before you try to do more.
Well, I think on that point, that's a good point because what scares me about Syndergaard is that he's basically banking on himself this season. He signed that 1 year, $21 million contract. And to me, that means he's pushing himself. And, with some of these pitchers, I would think, well, maybe I wouldn't be surprised if they get eased in or you see, less innings than you usually would. But that's not, with a contract like that, Syndergaard's not going to take it easy and he's not going to want to slow down. So I think that he will be pushing himself and that could be, not good, so I don't know.
I always wonder too with, obviously I'm a Mets fan, but so I've seen DeGrom and Syndergaard constantly push. And I always wonder with DeGrom, you have the best pitcher in baseball. And yes, it's part of it is probably because he's throwing as hard as he does, but why don't they just have him dial it back a little bit? And he's still going to be extremely good. And then I feel like you'll lessen the injury risk that way instead of him pushing 99 at every pitch he throws.
I think that I'm not. So I'm trying to learn.
I know we're not doctors,
right?
And stuff
no, but I do try and read a lot from strength and conditioning guys. Read from guys who are at the edge of trying to maintain player health and safety and things like that. One thing I would say is my guess is that that intentionally trying to take something off,
could be worse
if you're not doing it the right way. That you could have issues mechanically. Not definitely, because we know that you can do, but I would be curious to see. I don't know that that's the answer.
As opposed to pushing though also.
Yeah, no, but the thing is the Mets aren't pushing them. I don't think the Mets are the ones saying,
they definitely are themselves.
DeGrom is pushing himself.
He's just super competitive.
And I don't know that he shouldn't, but there are times where you go, oh, someone save him from himself.
Yeah.
Because there is there's a downside. There's a right way to do this and a wrong way to do this. I don't know what they are, but there are smarter people out there who I see talking about the ways to do this better. So all that to say, yes, I think Syndergaard is that fact that he's going to be trying to prove himself, Lauren. I think that's a great point and something that
I didn't think about
you'd
that.
be concerned about that.
Yeah. Just and I want to say real quickly, did Phil give a reason why he would choose kind of Severino or was least concerned about those?
I think it was just because you got to see him on the mound. That was really it. I mean, Verlander didn't get to see Syndergaard again. Like I said, you did, but he was limited to certain pitches. Clevenger, we haven't seen either. And plus, Clevenger is that harsh delivery that we all know that makes him clearly an injury risk. He's had plenty of them. So I would assume that's that. Yeah. I think he hinted at it, but and that was like right after the season ended, so I don't even know if he's changed his stance on that. He very well could have, but it was just something I decided to bring up. All right, let's skip to Dakota Hudson. Dakota Hudson is going at pick 427. Had one really good year, but then ended up with Tommy John. Ground ball pitcher, really good defense behind him, though. What are your thoughts on Dakota Hudson? Would you take a shot on him? Or let me ask you this, Derek. For someone who's not a hard thrower coming back from Tommy John, do you know, is that easier to come back from or easier to, I guess, shake off the rust?
I don't know about that. Generally speaking, what you hear Tommy John players talk about is not necessarily like fastball velocity, but it's control,
command,
and knowing exactly being able to have the pitches be their pitches again, as opposed to just, okay, I'm going to throw a curveball. So, but it is incredible in this day and age, not historically, because historically players came back within 12 months of Tommy John a lot. But in this day and age, you see a lot more 18 to 24 month than you do 12 month. And so like by today's standards, Dakota Hudson's recovery was blazing fast because he had surgery in late September of 2020 and was pitching in the minors in August and was up in the majors by September. I actually have drafted a lot of Dakota Hudson already, mostly because he's very, very affordable. And I think if you look at the way that they approach his Tommy John recovery, there is no reason to think that the Cardinals will be limiting Dakota Hudson. Had they said, hey, we're going to slow you down, you can come back next year, I'd have thought maybe that they might approach that more. But with the way they kind of let him go, I think they will continue to let him go. And that's kind of reading the tea leaves. I don't have any, info on that. That's just kind of my vibe from what the Cardinals did.
Yeah. I think he's a good pitcher to kind of go after later in drafts just because he's pitched well whenever he's on the mound. So, I mean, why not? And they got that really good defense behind him. Ground ball pitcher. It makes a ton of sense. All right, let's move on to hitters. Hoskins, he missed over 50 days in 2021 with a groin injury. He's going at pick 140. Obviously, a ton of power in that bat. He was playing really well before the injury. What are your thoughts on him, Derek? Is he someone, first base is a really deep position this year, it seems. And I feel like there's a good grouping there with him, Votto, and someone else, Bell, too, like good power, late power for first baseman there. Do you like Hoskins this year? Do you worry about the groin injury popping up again at all?
So last year was a unicorn season for upper leg injuries. In fact, we saw just an explosion of those type of injuries, groin, quads, and hamstrings. We saw just like rampant. So I'm going to try and be cautious about holding last year's upper leg injuries against players, but that is an injury that we generally watch for. It is a pretty repetitive injury. We see guys who they're prone to it for whatever reason, whether that be training or prior damage or whatever. So it is one that we do kind of see some recurrence rates with hitters specifically. But I'm going to try not to over penalize guys who had issues in 2021 because it does seem like it was a bit of a unique season. Rhys Hoskins has not had a clean few years. He had the elbow surgery in 2020. He got the internal brace procedure, which is similar but different to Tommy John. He has the groin stings in 21. He fractured his jaw in 2018. Was back in like 10 days. So he's a tough dude, but toughness will not help you. You can't tough out a groin strain, right? Like you gotta let it. I am concerned. And again, you have a guy like that. He's already a first baseman. Like there's no and when you see guys first baseman, we're going to talk about this with Voit and with Belt. When you see first baseman having injury problems, like they're already not out running in the outfield. They're already, oftentimes they're bigger bodied guys. Like, so if they start to have health issues, it's hard to see where do they go to protect them health wise. And maybe the NL gets the DH, but like, you don't want to necessarily say, okay, well, you're just a DH now if you're a guy who can actually play, reasonable defense at first base. So all that to say, like, I don't know.
All right. Thanks for the help, Derek.
Yeah, I know, right? So like, I would say early this year, my approach has just been I've just been not drafting Rhys Hoskins. I've not been avoiding him, but there is a lot of options at first base. So it's like, if there's any doubt, like I'll just take a different guy. And that, that's kind of where I've been at that so far.
Okay. And I'm kind of with you too, Derek, on that. It is so deep that, there are guys maybe behind him that I would take instead, but if he falls, possibly. But again, the depth of the position, it gives you a little bit of wiggle room, I think, this draft season.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to Brandon Belt. Missed 64 days with thumb, knee, and oblique injuries. Being taken at pick 236. Has, been really good when played, though, especially towards the end of the season. I know he had a family member pass away, and he dedicated the rest of the year to them, and he played really well. So is he like Hoskins, where you think there's just too much injury risk there, and he's not really worth being taken, even though, he is going basically 100 picks later?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, my approach to Brandon Belt is, for whatever reason, he's had a lot of different stuff. I'm not a guy who likes to use injury prone just because I think it kind of comes with some connotations. I think it implies that we understand why guys get injured when we don't always. Like, sometimes it's random, sometimes it's a pattern, sometimes, it's a training issue, but like, to think that we can just throw a label on it and go, okay, well, he's injury prone. We know it. We can see it. Look at his history. I don't always think it's that clear cut, but if you see a pattern of a guy who's not playing 650 inning or 650 plate appearances, let's just adjust. So my philosophy of Brandon Belt, I have a ceiling of 500 plate appearances, partially for health, partially because I don't think the Giants will play him every day. And if setting a 500 plate appearance projection gets you to the 260 range in ADP, like in your valuation, like, hey, go ahead. It doesn't for me, but I think I've drafted him one or two times. But yeah, I don't think you should expect more than 500.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Luke Voit, he's a mess. Missed a ton of playing time. I think it was due to knee injury this year, right? But he has, so correct me if I'm wrong, Derek, right? He has a heel issue, right? That happened
so I think
2 years ago or something like that.
That would have been, that's what I'm just pulling up right now. I think he had a heel issue that he didn't actually end up on the IL for. He just kind of fumbled through it, but then he had other issues that he did have. And I think the heel was actually, I don't have it in here. This is just my IL sheet. I might have it I have another sheet where I try and track guys who don't go to the IL, but do miss days. But yeah, there was kind of a heel thing that caused him some, I think he played some DH and he missed some time, but he's had an abdominal strain. He's had sports hernia. So again, those are very similar. That's all kind of connected there. So you could, those were related. He had a meniscus issue in 2021, oblique strain, knee inflammation. In 2021 was awful for him. Awful. But he's been so good when he's played. He's been good. And so it's like, I get why somebody looks at him and goes, you know what? I'm going to look past, because maybe 2021 was just like awful. But even more so than Rhys Hoskins, there's nowhere else for Luke Voit to go. He is not going to DH for that team.
Right.
So if he can't stay healthy playing first base, there's nowhere left to go for him.
Yeah.
So that's my concern with Voit, is that like the bottom is he doesn't play. Right. And
which is scary.
But the ceiling, yeah, right. That's scary. But the ceiling is like, hey, he could be good, and you were not going to be angry about it. So it's like, so I guess it would be, that to me is a risk profile thing. Like as I'm going through my roster, like, hey, how do I feel about the risk profile of my team? Do I feel like I have a lot of guys who been consistently able to play full seasons. Maybe I can take a chance on Luke Voit and try and get some some profit there, if you will, or just get some extra value. Hey, if I've already taken some guys who have some of that kind of health risk, like I don't want to like double down on Rhys Hoskins and Luke Voit and be like, I'm good at first base. But so that's kind of, I think that's going to be like the profile of your team thing.
Yeah, I think it's actually interesting in DC's right after him is Torkelson. And I feel like they're kind of, I mean, do we really know how many plate appearances Torkelson's going to get this year?
I say
like,
I take Voit
really
over Torkelson in that.
Right?
In that
what do you think, Lauren? You kind of
I'm with you, and I'm actually fine because he is going off the board right now as a 29th first baseman, and I. Like what Derek said, when he's in, we all know that he's good. He just hasn't been able to string all of this together. So I'm perfectly fine with him at this point. And if I was in a shallower league, I think he makes sense in terms of just trying to take a flyer on it, just because the replacement value, you have that. But I would be really iffy to do it kind of in deeper leagues or on certain formats where if the bottom falls out with Luke Voit, if he's not playing, then that's a real problem for your team. So you do have to consider that.
Yep.
Well, and and draft and hold, I think he's less interesting than a team where you can drop him.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, draft and hold. It's all about just getting those PAs. All right, I'm gonna skip some people here because I want to get to certain people at the end. All right, so let's look at Carlos Correa. Was often missing time in 2017, 2018, 2019, but has only missed 7 days in the last 2 seasons. That was due to COVID. He's going at pick 101, Derek. Do you still consider him an injury risk since the last season and a half? He's been pretty much okay.
This is again where I have the issue when we want to label, like we want to feel like we know a guy's risk profile, and we look at Carlos Correa before 2020, and this guy's injury prone. We can book it, and it's like he is until he isn't. And if you start now, it's unfortunate because the 2020 season is short, so you can't really say, well, he played a full 2020. Right. It's like how many years away from health issues does a player have to get before you go, you know what? I'm kind of interested in this. Now, part of the concern you have, so just look, this is the way I approach it, which is not the way everybody approaches it. But when I look through a guy's injury history, like look at the types of injuries he had. He tore a ligament in his thumb. I'm not going to hold that against a guy. He fractured his rib. I'm not going to hold that against a guy. Now, in between that, he had back issues. Those can be things that, kind of appear and disappear. And he had back issues across 2 different seasons. So you don't like to see that. Now that is something maybe you address. You do some specific training, you focus on, hey, I'm going to try and, strengthen things up and around my back, maybe do some torso work to try and, just help everything out. And so that could get better. So I guess the long-winded answer that I would say is I don't see him as definitively more risky than other shortstops. I think that, anytime you have a back, some back issue, I get a little nervous, but even then it's not like he's had back surgery. He's not, it's not like we're seeing this guy who can't move around, who's like, or he's coming off back-to-back seasons of back injuries or something like that. So I've drafted him a few times. I'm not going, this is an Iron Man, but I'm not shying away from him.
So I think something interesting, and what I want to see what your opinion is on this, Lauren. Carlos Correa right now is going after Bobby Witt Jr. So someone that we've never seen play in MLB. Is there any shot that you would take Bobby Witt Jr. over Carlos Correa?
No, I mean, I would probably lean towards Correa. I mean, I understand the allure of Bobby Witt Jr., but it's again, we don't know exactly what we're going to get there in terms of playing time or how he's like fully. I know that he's adjusted well from level to level, in the minors, but no, I want to be going with a known entity, I think.
Yeah. I'm assuming, do you agree, Derek?
So I was going to look to see. I think I've taken Bobby Witt Jr. over Carlos Correa.
Oh, you're a Bobby Witt Jr. guy.
No, I'm not like a Bobby Witt Jr. stan. I think my approach has been like, if I'm going to draft him, I'm going to draft him now because I don't think his price is going down. Like he's not a guy who's going to get cheaper as like spring training is going to come around and he's going to go do what guys do in spring training. And it's going to be good. And like, he's not, so it's like, if I want a few shares, which I do, I like to have a few shares of exciting players. I'll take it now as opposed to later. So I've probably got all the shares I'm going to have, but I think at least one draft, Carlos Correa was still on the board. And I took
all right. That's fair.
I'll cop to it. I'll admit to it.
All right, next player is Byron Buxton. Has missed 195 days in the last 3 seasons, going pick 62. We all know there's an MVP season in there somewhere. Derek, will it be this year?
Well, I think this is, it's going to happen when people, whenever the last person who is a Byron Buxton believer says I'm out, like that'll be the season. But like what I would say again about Buxton is, so like the difference between Buxton and Correa, like show me that you can stay healthy for a season. Give me something to dream on, because he hasn't at this point. And if I had that, then I think I'd be more interested. But I'd rather be the guy who misses the healthy season and maybe gets the next one. But like until you show me that you can do it, I'm going to be skeptical that you can. But I also don't think that we should just label him as injury prone and mean he can never stay healthy. And that's the part, because I think that there's a lot of things that guys can do to change health outcomes. I think that that's something that we're seeing baseball is getting hip to, and is going to, like, I think we're going to see changes in players and the approach that teams have that is going to change guys who couldn't stay healthy. Like, I do think we will see guys begin to change some of those profiles. I don't know which guys those will be and what teams it'll be, but like there's a lot of discussion happening around that. And so what we can't do is get locked into saying, well, he is this way, he'll always be this way. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't go, hey, Byron, show me that you can be healthy before I'm going to believe that you can be healthy. Right. That said, he's really good when he's playing. I think that, in a certain type of, if you have a very high risk appetite, I don't think it's wrong. I think that you just can't be surprised when your 30% outcome or 20% outcome of everything going right. If it doesn't happen, you can't say, well, I expect it to happen. It's like, well, it's a risk like any other. But yeah.
What do you, Lauren, you gonna take any shots on Buxton this year?
No. And I never have. I've always been comfortable with letting someone else kind of take their shot. And there always is, and there always someone who does it really earlier and way earlier than I think that they need to. I get the appeal. But no, I've always been fine letting someone deal with it. I do think it's interesting though, because with the Twins, he just signed a 7-year, $100 million contract extension. And so, the Twins, obviously, to me, that means that they have some sort of confidence, or they are maybe less concerned about some of these injury red flags. And maybe that speaks to, what Derek was talking about in terms of, maybe you can't, yes, he may have this history, but we can try and make you better, or have a less kind of injury prone history perhaps, or future perhaps. Because I feel like that contract, 7 years with Byron Buxton, when you've got like 7 years where he hasn't played a full season, is interesting. I think it's notable.
Yeah.
It's
such a creatively constructed contract though. Like he has
is
more incentive than any other player in baseball to figure out if
what's going
being
on.
Healthy. Yes. If he can change this pattern, if he can develop the health skill, whatever you want to call it. Like, I'm not sure there's any player who has, a different range of outcomes to him personally than Byron Buxton does when it comes to his health, because the amount of money that's on the table, if he's healthy with the talent that we know he has, like I think they have a ton of incentives laid in that contract.
Okay.
So he has no more incentive than he could he has as much as incentive as he possibly have to try and figure this out. We'll see if he can.
I've never owned a Buxton share.
Me neither.
Ever. And it is always because of the injury risk. I don't know why this year. I don't have a share. I want one really. I just have a feeling that, I don't know why. In my gut, I just feel like it's going to happen this year.
Okay.
I don't know
watching
why,
him,
but
watching him smash baseballs when you don't have a single, like, I don't care who you are. These people who are like, oh, it'll end. Like, it's like, you can say that, but you're like inside, you're like, oh, what if this is the season? Like,
yeah,
like you die a little bit, like each home run he hits, where it's like, oh no, what if
Yep. All right, we're gonna finish it there. Thank you so much for coming on, Derek. Really appreciate it. Tell everyone where they could find you and everything you do and all that stuff.
Yeah. So kind of two different sides to Derek. If I can talk in the third person for a second. One side is the injury stuff. So I track injuries for Baseball Prospectus. I do injury visualizations for them. And this is my first year doing that. We're going to continue to run that back next year. We have a lot of stuff to help people track their personal team, their favorite baseball team, their fantasy team, trends in general. So that's what I do over at BP. Come check us out. And then on the fantasy baseball side, I do a lot of best ball stuff at jag_fantasy. That's another Twitter handle. It's like my fantasy burner account. And that's where I talk about best ball specific stuff. I get kind of wonky into some of the scoring. I've got a couple things on my page just for anyone. If you want to learn more about best ball, understand the scoring formats and stuff like that, I really try to help people because they are different, and it's helpful to, I think, get that info in people's brain. So yeah, you can find me on Twitter at DRHOA3. That's my main account. But thanks for having me on. I had a blast, guys. This was fun.
Yeah, it's real fun.
And I don't know why I always want to spell your last name after the D. I always want to put an E. I don't know why.
That's how normal people spell it. That's like,
so maybe that's why.
Yes, yeah. My family's the weird one. I've petitioned that we should drop the H. Like, let's just lean into the road. Like, let's just, but nobody's been on board with that.
Nobody's done that yet.
No.
All right. Thanks for coming on. Thank you for everyone listening. You can follow me on Twitter at SPStreamer. You can follow Lauren on Twitter at LK Auerbach. If you do enjoy the show, please rate and review us on whatever platform you're listening to. Check out our website, spstreamer.com. Drew Wheeler just dropped his first article ever. It's a really good one about players with a lot of speed and who also get on base often. So make sure you check that out. We will be back next week with another guest. So stay tuned, and thanks again for listening, guys. See you soon.